Up early again. Up early again. Good morning. Too early. First part of my awakening process had me, I hate saying that. I really do. Awakening. And maybe I'll get over that. The first part of this process had me up at a normal time, and then had me sleeping in because I just loved that rest. Now lately it's just been up, and the body says it's absolutely time to get up. So, I'm learning more and more to just follow that urging to just get up. And I was sitting quietly in the living room, trying not to wake my partner up. And something said to come out and talk. So I never really know what I'm going to say on any of this stuff. And already this is such a silly enterprise, and when I say silly, I mean it in the best possible way. Like, what the fuck am I doing? I don't know anything. Here's a weird one about sleep. I have noticed there's no difference in between being asleep and being awake. And I suppose we could get into the science of it, the nuts and bolts, and there are folks who've given much better explanations than me. So what I will say is that there's something that is always awake. That's not the mind, that's not the body. And while saying it out loud can make it sound really neat, very mystical, very eternal, sometimes it's a lot. It's a lot. There's always something here. And clearly, I think it goes without saying that something is undefinable. But the ability to check out, to shut down in sleep, or to say I'm overwhelmed, I'm overstimulated, let me sleep on it, is gone. Now, it's not to say that the body doesn't do its resets. I am a napping fool. I love those middle of the day resets, especially if there's been a ton of processing that's happening, or there's all kinds of energy moving through the body. But it's still, those are a little bit different. When I go into deep sleep, there's still something there, and I can't really describe to you accurately what's there. My only guess, and this is partially based on descriptions that I've heard, is that memory stops. But what's really here and what we truly are can't wink out of existence, right? So anyway, that's enough of the woo-woo stuff about it. The processing has shifted. The residual processing has shifted into overdrive. And I emailed somebody I respect in this community about it. And I want to say it was probably, I don't know, doesn't matter, a year ago. And their response to me was, those repressed, any repressed material is gonna come up. It's gonna show up. And again, as seems to be a common thread over the last week or two, this stuff sounds good on paper if you read it in a way like, ooh, this spiritual process is happening to me. Ooh, this is mystical. Ooh, this is a new stage. This is a new whatever the fuck. But when you're right in the middle of it, you're like, damn, that's great. Thanks, appreciate it. But I would really like to just go to sleep now. I would like some total rest. And so the body takes what rest it can. Funny enough, the body is almost never tired. If you really notice, I've started to have it be really clear to see that the body itself doesn't really get tired unless you do some really crazy kind of like physical exertion through the day that pushes your body past what it can do. And even then, it seems to recover very quickly. It's the mind. It's the thought processes that tend to sort of drag down the movement of the body and really put it into, it's like running through pudding. And as that started to become clearer, that whole notion, I found that really fascinating, because I would go, well, I am tired, and try to localize where that sense was. And the fatigue always felt here. It didn't, if I did like a body scan and checked like my legs or like somewhere in the arms or the torso, they seem to be moving around just fine. And I don't know that I can chalk it up to, you can be dismissive about it and say, well, it's just mental strain or identification with thought, which, yeah, I think can be part of it. But there's another sense here of it's just an energetic kind of a movement, and it's a clearing out, and it's a coming, and it's a bringing up to the surface, and because it always seems to go up and then up here and then dissipates. And there are days when I'm excited to be on that ride, and like this morning is pretty good. 2 or 3 days ago, I woke up at around the same amount of time and felt like death, just like there was a pinching, this is going to be funny, like hard, it was a pinching fog that was just here, just doing this thing, and could not shake it off. Body said, no, you're not going back to sleep. So I kind of zombied around through the day, got about 2/3 through my work day, and left. Thankfully, I'm in a position where I work for myself, so I can leave when I want if I'm not actively doing work. And I boned out. Just left. And 90s and 80s kids, there you go. There's some slang for you. I boned out. Means I left. So there's no rest and sleep, and not rest and not the good rest. There's no getting away from this. The inevitability. Another 90s reference. I'm like Agent Smith, who's got his neck around Neo, and he goes, hear that? That's the sound of inevitability. And you go, fuck, man. Thanks for the ride. I could say it gets easier, but in reality, it gets different. It's a different thing that moves through, or sometimes it's an echo of a larger thing that moved through some habit, some trauma, some pocket of identification. And it's like, what are you going to do? You are just ultimately always along for the ride, right? I think if there's anything we can do, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and I think if we want to talk about things like practices, you know, and I know everybody likes different types of stuff, which is all great. I think a deliberate practice of openness and curiosity. What is this? And then don't wait for an answer. Just, it seems to create an openness. It seems to shut down some of the time. I mean, it's always, no practice is effective 100% of the time, right? But it seems to shut down the pushing back against it. Just, what is this? What's happening? What's going on? It brings you right back to the present, which is such a paradox because you're always in the present, right? But it brings you right back into the visual field, the body's senses. I notice I have a tendency, and have had a tendency, I think I'm gonna make a whole video on this, of conclusions. I have a tendency to want to form a conclusion about stuff, and I think that's normal. I haven't met anybody that hasn't formed a conclusion about what's happening during their unfoldment of reality. And I wanted to collect conclusions. And in a lighthearted, humorous way, if I collected all of the conclusions and was able to save them and put them into use all at once at one time, and I'd be like the exponential Buddha. At least that's what it would. At least that's what it felt like every time I had one. And you're like, wow, oh my God, it's this, you know. And I might gallop off to, hey guys, guess what? Check it out. You're not really there. This is all designed perfectly for you. Sorry. I put a comment on one of my earlier videos. I don't always laugh like this. It seems that I've been doing that because it's just, some of it's just fucking laughable, and it's so funny. You have to laugh at it. You have to laugh at the utter silliness of it all, of like, what the hell am I even doing? And I mean, I laugh at the human condition because, man, we can be fucked up, right? In what seems like every single possible permutation. You know, guaranteed there's a guy out there who thinks wearing a snorkel and a bra on his head is the right thing to do. It has to have happened at least once. Guaranteed. I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm actually quite grateful for being able to laugh at it. When I was younger, you know, teenagers, if you have kids, or you were a kid for sure, everyone was a kid, and you were like, this is fucking important, god damn it. You don't understand. And whatever it was you were wound up about was so deadly serious. And you might have, your older sibling or your authority figure, your parent, whatever, start laughing. And remember how infuriating that was? Like, fuck, you're not listening to me. And it's not to take away anything from whatever the kid's point was, because yeah, at that point in time it's super fucking serious. But as I collected a gigantic bucket of trauma, everything got to be really, really serious. And anytime one of those little trauma nerves was poked, especially, I don't know when it was worse, sort of before starting this whole thing or after. But maybe after, and something would get poked. And there's this roar, this resistance, this pushing against it. It's akin to, I think maybe if it was a response after all of this process unfolded, it's akin to those people, those people that walk around putting signs up that say, "Protect your peace." Like, where's this peace you speak of? And what are you doing to protect it? And I'm not in any way, shape, or form mocking anybody that does that. I live in a community where people put those kinds of things up, and I get it, and I see it. I realize I'm on a tangent right now. I'll be back. Of like anything and everything to be like, look, I'm gonna put my fucking talisman out on the front lawn, and that'll keep bad things from happening. And when you're in those moments like that, peace can be so fragile, especially early on. Cynics and trauma victims are the worst, man. You get like, let's say you get like a little opening, or you get a little stillness in meditation, or you get some kind of breakthrough or an aha moment, and it's so fragile. It's like a little, it's like a little seedling of a plant or something that's just barely there, and it just takes one, and all hell breaks loose. So I get it. I'm grateful now that I laugh at stuff, and I really want it to be communicated that laughing is like a deep love and a deep compassion and a deep empathy for just the human condition. It's no different here of how silly we are. And I don't know if you can learn to laugh at yourself. I think it comes naturally, but if you find yourself in that territory, it's really good. It's pretty nice. It's not appropriate all the time, of course. I have times where I'm very quiet. Over the last couple of weeks, actually, have been a tremendous grieving. Like I was writing a friend about it yesterday. Actually, was talking about launching the channel, and I'm like, this is really weird. That I'm not. The only thing I'm feeling right now is this tremendous grief over what I couldn't necessarily say. I could say that it felt like fragments or remnants of identity, of the things that are still being clung on to. So, but moving back to it, this is going to be called, and we're going to title this the Tangent Talk, I think. Tangent Dharma, satsang and tangents. Laughing at this stuff is, I think, if you get to that point, I would say that it's really good territory, because it really is just the funniest thing that humans are just flailing around. I think, if we want to talk about enlightenment or awakening or whatever, what would they say, as a many-faceted jewel, I think one of those facets would absolutely have to be embracing the flailing, just the clearest seeing of, you're just like, fuck it, I have no idea what's going on, free for all. Not in a harmful way, of course, but like every time I'm able to laugh at myself and which happens a lot now because I still do dumb shit all the time. And the first thing that comes out of my mouth, usually while I'm laughing, I go, "Was that me? That was me. I did that." First obviously I check, make sure like somebody's not on the other side of the joke, or in the situation like super hurt. If they are, that's obviously there's a whole different response that comes out. But the lighthearted stuff, or where I'm just being dumb, or I forget something, or I bang my head against an open cabinet door, or I go to the store for one thing and that's the one thing I forget. Um, or I run into a corner because I haven't rounded it as I'm moving through the house. All the dumb stuff of like, what were you thinking? And I'm like, well, it wasn't. I think every time I laugh at that stuff, it seems to undo that seriousness and that clench that I took life to be when I was viewing it through so much of that trauma. Because man, that was a fucked up place to be. I don't know that I could ever describe the lens through which life was viewed here, but it was really oppositional, and everyone was either predator or prey. You were either a threat or you had something I wanted, and it was endless the amount of projections I had about, all based in defending this imaginary ego, this imaginary identity. I used to, I don't know if anyone here has ever done this. Put your hand up. I used to, let me create a scenario here. Okay, so say I'm going out and I know I'm going to be in a social situation, and then I'm going to plan my outfit, whatever I wanted to wear, and then I might, I don't know, maybe guess of like who might be there and what the situation might be, and literally there would be this kind of mental hologram that would show up, and it's like, here's me walking in with my fucking whatever, and then here's me over here talking to so and so, and it was like I was assessing and trying to choose exactly which Ted I was going to present at that moment, what it was going to look like. If I was feeling cocky that day, it would be that Ted's got it all together, or if I was feeling kind of, hey, finger pistol-y, maybe I was going to go over and grin at the ladies. That never works, by the way. Ever. Or if I was in a situation where I could present where I knew something, well, and so on and so forth and so on. And it was just endless. And at some point, it dawned on me, like I got really hip to the fact that, like, wow, we're creating these like hologram projections of us that's always just a little bit in the future, right? It could be half a second, or it could be like hours, like at an event or something, or whatever. And it's like, how many times do we use those to either maintain what we think we are, or use them as retreat? And I wouldn't say in a healthy way. Like, yeah, I don't know, you book a vacation. Like one of my favorite places, I live in Southern California, one of my favorite places is and will always be Disneyland. And I'm three when I'm there. I'm always three, and I don't give a fuck about the crowds or how much it costs, although I can't afford to go as much as I used to, or the strollers, or any of that. I'm there and I'm transported. And so when I would book anyway, that's another tangent. I could just talk about Disney all day long. I would book a Disney trip, and I would notice that, like, automatically, almost without any volition, any what felt like direct volition of my own, that if I was having a boring day or was feeling uncomfortable or feeling a certain kind of way, that instantly, boom, I'm like there, and I'm walking down Main Street, or I'm getting on the Pirates ride, or to go smell that amazing water, or whatever it was, and I was there. Here's an interesting one. There's nothing inherently special about Disney. I mean, you could say there is. And okay, we're not going to go down that road, because that's just a tangent from which I will never recover. Man, I'm all over the place today. Love it. There's nothing inherently special about Disney or our favorite song or going to a concert or viewing a piece of art. I think, but okay, but when we see these things, don't they bring up something in us? It's like it brings you completely and totally into the present, and something opens and you're just not anywhere but there. And okay, like, have you ever seen anybody at a bar or at a concert or being moved by a piece of art? And especially like if you're at a concert, people will hear that song they've heard 45 million times, and they just let loose and their eyes are closed and they're not aware of anyone else, and they might be singing or swaying back and forth, or dancing or something, and that just opens up something in them where they're not identified anymore. I mean, there might be a surface level identification with the song, but it's that familiarity, right? And I think I noticed it's funny that and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, that we will go after those familiar things. Oh, I just love this place. I love this song. I like this food. And it brings us such joy. I think at some point I wanted that all the time. That I saw the triggers and the mechanisms that sort of opened that aperture up and felt like, why should it be limited to just those things? And it's not to say that I won't have some excitement if I were to just hop up right now and jump in the car and go to Disney. Of course I would, because Disney's amazing, right? For me. In later years, later on, say in the last 2 or 3 years, I started noticing that would show up more and more and more and more often. I would find myself in a completely unfamiliar situation and go, this feels so familiar. And not in like a, I don't know, past lives sort of way. I couldn't pin it down. I think one of the most profound ones was when I was visiting a friend in the UK, and we walked past this hill, and it's called the Longman Brewery, and if you've ever seen it, it's this very weird thing on the side of the hill, and it's like a picture of a person holding a staff, and just at the base of this hill, it's just these open sort of meadows. And I stopped, and it was so profound. I couldn't tell you what it was. I knew I'd never been there before, and I was overwhelmed by the sense that I had been there before. And again, it didn't feel like I wanted to get into the past lives thing or all of that. That might be true, that might not. I will just say that that particular subject doesn't really hold any interest for me. But I had been here before, and I started crying. And I was overwhelmed by I don't know what. Now that familiarity shows up all the time. I guess if I had to make an analysis on it, which I'm not really inclined to say that this is definitive, it's like the familiarity is not necessarily the location, it's the essence of what is here that seems to really never move. That seems to be deathly still, you know. It just makes itself clearer more and more and more often. As that shows up, that becomes a very comforting feeling. There's a comforting sensation in that, and that sensation is or it's not a sensation, but it's like a knowing that ultimately that all is well, even in the middle of all of the pain and the confusion and the trauma coming up and the doubts about the material world of like bills and what's happening next and all that. There's an ever increasing sense of comfort that all is well. And how could any of this be any different? And how could any of this it's like you can't be hurt, not what you really are. How could any of this go away? And I don't mean whatever the particularities of what it is that I'm seeing right now, but what this is, right? What you are, what we are, can't go away. It literally can't not exist. Couldn't prove that to you on paper, but the evidence is directly there. And it's noticed and seen here more and more and more. All you have to do is check in with the sense of presence, awareness, consciousness. I realize there's a lot of debate over those words. I'm not interested in it. I don't fucking care about it. If you want to be like that, just call it here-ness or isness. It's not generated by the mind. It's not generated by the body. It's not coming from the chair that I'm sitting on. It's all things and contains all things and is no things. And it makes a lot more sense when the Tibetans would talk about the diamond nature, the indestructible nature of this. And you're like, what are you even talking about? And later on, go, wow, you can't not, existence can't not be. It's both self-confirming and self-negating at the same time. It can't not. It could maybe even go dark to itself, but it wouldn't not be. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go too far off the deep end here, or this part is going to be impossible to talk about. Every time I want to say something about it, I realize the absolute futility of it. So I feel sort of delightfully stuck in talking about relatable stuff, because you can't talk about the absolute, but you know, in reality, it's the only thing it is. So all of this is just a silly exercise. It's just a silly expression. It's fun, except when it's not. And by all of this, I mean sitting down and talking about this stuff. I often wonder if I'm going to run out of words, because there's simultaneously nothing to say and then an infinite amount of ways to kind of get close to talking about it. So I'll babble for as long as seems relevant or necessary or appropriate for the moment, and then maybe I'll stop. Glad you guys are here. Next time.